So there we go. The first statement. In the next 5 years, banks that don't embed non-financial services risk losing relevance. The banking app is becoming the new super app. First, I would like to hear from Thomas. Thomas, what do you make of this?
Well, I think it's in line with what I shared before. So basically, if you have all this data from different sources, it would not make sense to automate and to make lives easier for the people using the bank accounts. And then we're, in our case, talking about CFOs, we're talking about controllers, bookkeepers, accountants. All those people still have a lot of manual tasks and different systems to integrate. And that's something that's super inefficient. So if you're a business owner and you have 7 different platforms, and it takes you 7 to 14 days to close your books, and that's working with traditional banks, or you have a new super app, or an even newer super app, that resolves that time and cuts the time by 70%, then that's a huge win. And I think now when people are trusting more and more the neobanking side of things, that if you don't speed it up as a traditional bank, then you might lose that.
All right. Francesco, I think a lot of people here are also familiar with the Revolut app.
On my end, I agree with the statement, but with some reservations. I think that banks in general and financial institutions should not include non-financial services if it's not relevant for the customers. So I think at the core of what we're doing usually, and what fintechs are doing, is that we put the customers, I think, and the customer experience at the center of what we're doing. And this is why I think we're gaining market share. This is why we're relevant. This is why people need services like ours. Because I think that if everything was running impeccably, we would not be there. Where we are now, we would not have 1 million customers in the Netherlands, for instance. And the way we would look at integrating a non-financial service at Revolut is that we would look at customer demand, and we would see how we can potentially deliver value for our customers and how we can potentially do it better than our competition. So if I can take a very concrete example of non-financial services that we added, we have an app which is which used to be very centered around traveling, that we're now heavily localizing in every market. But we also added all of those services around insurances, the fact that you can book your hotels, your experiences, etc., everything through the app. And I think that it adds a lot of value to the customers. But we would not have done it simply if we hadn't seen that it's really brought something and that we could potentially do it better than the competition as well. So, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I get very angry eyes here because this guy will not build anything that's not relevant for the users. So, no, 100% agree. Only relevant stuff.
Well, with one of the comments that you made, Francesco, that's actually a good lead-in to the second statement. So, if we can stay with you a little bit, Francesco. For challengers, regulatory navigation and not innovation has become the primary barrier to scaling across Europe.
It's quite a bold statement, I would say. We don't necessarily need to oppose completely regulation and innovation, because sometimes regulation can be a driver of innovation as well. It really depends from one case to the next. But if I can answer this question from a very personal perspective, maybe, because I'm coming from a company where we have an absolutely amazing international product. And my role here at Revolut Belgium and Netherlands is to adapt it locally and to try to speak a little bit more to the Dutch customer and then to the Belgian customer. And I have two maybe illustrations that I can use to discuss this statement, where I've seen indeed that some legislation can, if not done correctly, block innovation and deliver actually less value for customers. The first I would use is in the Netherlands. Right now, one of the legislation that is currently being discussed is the access to cash legislation. People that know me know that I've been quite vocal on the topic. But what this proposed legislation is, which in essence, I think that the politicians want to pass it in order to protect the customers and to enable access to cash. However, a side effect of the way it's currently being drafted is that it would force banks to primarily offer cash through ATMs only. And that, in essence, blocks any sort of innovation you could have with regards to the use of cash in the Dutch society, for instance. So that's one first example I could use. And the second one I could use from my experience in Belgium. We're currently in the testing phase of the launch of the Belgian branch. And in parallel to launching a branch, what we usually try to do is we try to come with like a series of products to launch in parallel, such as a localized savings account. I came across the Belgian legislation on savings account, for instance, which was drafted in 2014, which means 1 full year before Revolut even existed. And it's a legislation that in a lot of details explains to you how your physical documents need to be laid out, plus the size of the fonts almost that you need to use in order to present your savings account. And it's quite fascinating because this law is very, very heavily enforced by the local regulator there. And it's totally inadapted to a company like ours, where people would subscribe for such a product through an app, for instance. Which the result of this is a legislation which is supposed to protect your customers and to increase the clarity and understanding to your customers about like what they're going to sign up for. We end up delivering, let's say, like a lower product experience, I would say, to our customers due to the fact that the legislation has not evolved, let's say, like in quite a while. So, yeah.
You know, I can imagine that, you know, for banks, it's for regulators, it's the same kind of challenge in balancing the innovation, supporting the banking sector to innovate, but at the same time, you know, protecting the consumers with proper regulation. What is your view on this, Frans, what you've heard so far?
Well, I actually think this might be a very valid point. So let me first make the point that I think that in the regulatory and policy domain, there's not that much risk tolerance anymore. So if we see a risk, we immediately think that we need to make regulation there. So if I look at the banking industry, there are more than 15,000 pages of regulation currently. And if you want to be compliant with it all, I think it's not possible because there must be like maybe hundreds or thousands of contradictions there. So we make it very, very difficult for banks. And I think it's very wise for policymakers, for politicians to try to make these regulations easier. But asking a bureaucrat to make less rules is very difficult. But I think that there are ways that we need to do it. So what we are doing now at the Dutch Central Bank is really trying to harmonize the rules from a European perspective and not do any gold plating anymore. So what gold plating means is basically that there's European regulation and you implement it nationally and you do more or extra or something different, right? So we strongly support not European directives anymore, but regulations. And regulations work directly so there's a European law and that's valid for every country, while directives need to be implemented in national law. So for instance, we have the AI Act now, and what we said as the Dutch Central Bank is, we are not going to give any guidance on the national level. We are going to wait for the European guidance, and then we just want to follow the European guidance, so there are harmonized rules there. So this is really something we as regulators should do. But I think also, on the other hand, there's also an issue for financial institutions, FinTechs, trying to scale. It's not working, I think. Like mentioned before, I think for FinTechs it's less the case, but don't let regulation and also differences in regulation stand in your way, right? I think it's also like another statement we are going to address. I think if you use technology, you can solve a lot of problems, right? So, and also if a regulator is being unreasonable and there's European regulation, just point them out that it's unreasonable what they're doing. You can do that, I think. I hope. So using technology to scale in different regulatory regimes could be a solution. So I think we have to do both things. First, more harmonization by regulators. Secondly, using more regulatory technology by financial institutions to address this problem. I think. Yeah.
Well, it's just going to get more exciting. We're just going to do it with one microphone now. Marijus, before going to the next statement, which is actually addressed to you, I was just curious, coming from Lithuania, which has a reputation also of being an innovative fintech hub with a very supportive regulator. I believe your regulators are in big numbers at Money 2020. They're on panels, they are presenting. Do you recognize all of this also in Lithuania, or would you say that you have a slightly different environment there when it comes to, you know, innovation and seeing regulation as an obstacle or not?
So it's fascinating to see how does it look like from outside when you're living inside, and it looks like, you know, the picture is a bit of different. There were about 3 to 4 cases of the businesses going bankrupt in the last, I think, 2 years when the regulation just didn't work. Okay, so if the Lithuanian government about 5 to 6 years ago has created some kind of a hub for any, you know, businessman to come with the idea again to get the license, now they have about 250 credit institutions, which is, I think, close to the total number in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, the only thing they can do, when I'm being asked by press, I'm saying, imagine there is a soccer or football match where 250 people are trying to run around and play something. And the only thing the referee can do actually is just to give red cards for them to not to kill each other. So that's how it works right now. It's not interesting for the crowd, for the investors and the players themselves. So that's exactly what's working. But from the other hand, when I'm talking to regulator, I'm doing that on a monthly basis, I said, no, the way the financial sector was structured, especially in the FinTech world, about 30 to 40 years ago in the United States, is the regulator actually was a financial advisor, a consultant for you to do the business, not legally, but actually profitably. If you go to the Wikipedia, try to find the history of FinTech, which is actually another word of the core banking platform as a separate business, that's what it is. So I said, why do you, when you issue the penalty, have a hall of shame, but don't have a hall of fame? Why they don't thank any business to doing great, like Revolut and Paysera, and said, okay, for Revolut to have a separate team on you too, you know, to deal with the things you're doing. So obviously we're not that great, but in principle, I think the only thing most of the regulators can do right now is to bring more rules, because that's the way the market works. I'm really excited that the banking itself sector is very mature. We have traditional banking, we have innovators, and they're playing quite well. One of them are like, you know, adopting only the products which are time proven, others are experimenting. So, you know, is the regulator too much? I think it's great right now. Let's not invent more rules, but for now it's quite mature.
All right, thanks. If we can go to the next statement, and we'll stay with you. It's not only regulation that you have to navigate in the international business, but there's a bit more. And the statement is, challenger banks that operate across borders must rethink the concept of scale. The old one platform fits all doesn't work in fragmented markets like Europe.
Well, Paysera does have that problem because it is sharing the common infrastructure and product portfolio, trying to bring, you know, products to the local market. So localization is a problem. You know. Every business does that, especially the multinational ones. Lucky us, we are bringing European Union-wide products to the countries which are just emerging, like Albania, like Kosovo, you know, like Georgia. They are getting SEPA instant they never had before, which is great. But in time, you face the problem that you either have to go a little bit risky and adopt the products you have for the local market, maybe, I don't know, maybe paying for your petrol using the app, maybe kind of common thing in EU, not that common in Africa because they don't kind of have petrol stations at all, and so on. So it's a big question, but I think the market has already answered that. So what you do, first of all, you give a really, really comprehensive platform. This is what the super app idea is. So you give the platform and tools for the businesses to build the products very easy. Other point is that the speed of AI in terms of using that as internal tool for development is phenomenal. The way you can actually launch your idea to the market, if before the kind of really fast time scale was a month, maybe 2, now younger generations are building ideas within the weekend on a hackathon. It's like a really advanced LAN party. So that's how it works, and I think the overall market is ready for international expansion. Adaptation is there. the market players don't really care anymore. Is it a fintech or a bank? Because to be honest, they look the same. And you know, and in general, most of the people don't even think as local inhabitants because they travel a lot. So is it Revolut in Netherlands or Paysera in Albania? Is it other banks anywhere else? They expect the same quality. So the international question, I think it's not a question anymore.
All right, if we can stay on that side with Thomas. Thomas, as young as you guys are, GoDutch is very quickly also going abroad. How do you approach this?
Yeah, I mean, we're now only focused on the Netherlands, but indeed we are a European product. But I think it's more that to zoom out a bit. I think we like to see the European Union as one market, right? We want to compare ourselves to the US, but the reality is that it's basically 27 small states, and indeed, unfortunately, with a lot of the local rules. I'm very happy that you mentioned that the DNB is looking to become more of the European system, but we already see in the countries that we're looking at to expand to that first of all the type of companies are different, and the way they are registered in the local chamber of commerce is different, data security, data reliance, is all these things are so much different that it's basically an approach where you have to go to every market like it's a different continent. And I think Revolut has seen it as well in the past. It's not that easy, and I know there's things that we're working on, and we know that we're moving towards a more unified Europe, and I'm also very much a protest of that. But the reality is it will take many, many years before we get there. And luckily we have, let's say, innovators here that are doing it, but I think this is something that also the regulators can play a role in. So between countries, trying to have, let's say, better baselines, and indeed, with the DNB I think we're quite lucky. So I think DNB is one of the better regulators in Europe, so that means that also once you are DNB approved, it's easier for you to expand to other countries. While, for example, Lithuania, it could be the other way around. Also thanks to, of course, Revolut and the speed they had, of course, with that. But yeah, I think overall, much to do, but yeah, let's go for a unified Europe.
Right.
Thanks. Yeah, then we go, we're running about half an hour late, so we're going into the last statement of this panel. And we're going back to Frans. I know you've already presented on this, so now I'm going to give you a statement. And that is AI-driven RegTech will shift compliance from being a cost center to a strategic advantage, but only for those who invest early and deeply.
Yes, I completely agree with this. I would say that the head of compliance, it would be very good if the head of compliance would be part of the board, I think. Because I think this really is a strategic play. And like I mentioned before, I think if you do not use technology, and especially AI, within your compliance, you're just lost. Because more and more rules are coming. I've seen the agenda from the European Commission for the next few years. They are not stopping. And also on the lower level, with the European supervisory authorities, they are not stopping. So I think it would be very wise, very unwise not to do it. Obviously you have to deploy it in a responsible way, because there are risks around AI, and mainly when I go somewhere and speak, I only talk about the risks of AI, but I didn't do that today, so I'm not going to do that now also. But they are there, so responsible deployment is very, very important. But I want to stress that it can be done. So I've seen very, very talented data science people in banking, like data science PhDs, and they can actually do these things. I'm very much confident about that. But where I think progress needs to be made is in leadership. Because there's so much fear there, also from the criminal cases that were brought to banks on the AML side. That leadership should take responsibility here and try to innovate here also. Yeah.
So it's a good thing that we have the leadership of the three respective institutions sitting here on stage. So based on the statement and what Frans has just said, could I ask you, if we start with Francesco and go towards Thomas via Marijus, that you get one final statement on this, and then we take it for questions to the audience. So on the AI-driven RegTech, leadership, compliance shouldn't be on board, and investing early and deeply in AI.
I think that the situation is different from one institution to the next. When talking from the Revolut perspective, of course, it's absolutely essential in the sense that we're more and more present and more deeply rooted in many European countries and also globally. So the use of RegTech is essential to grow into facilitating the operations, especially if you want to limit the number of people you have doing for manual reuse and those sort of stuff. It's a better use of the tool at our disposal to be more efficient, I would say.
I think there's one topic which covers everything, that it's fascinating times to be alive, I would say. And it's really interesting to see the monetary politics actually going backwards, where we're highly likely ditching so-called bank notes, the ones which were invented in exchange for the gold, 3 times its value. And everybody's may not jump to the exchange of the value, which can be, but something in the middle, which is digital. So Paysera is going there, and everybody's going there, and it's really interesting to see how clever we are actually inventing that.
Yeah, and from us, I mean, from my previous experience with other neobanks, I know how hard it is to do it with hindsight. So to start with this early is for us, it's a strategy. So we're in that sense very lucky that we can use the already a bit more modernized laws and also more open regulators to do this indeed very early and to make sure that we are doing it in a smart way. So I do hope that the amount of rules from Europe that's coming will be interpreted in a, let's say, open way, and that we can indeed use AI for banking, because that's also something that's on our roadmap. But it's hard to convince this with the regulator, because the regulator doesn't always understand, and what the regulator doesn't see, they will also, from a risk perspective, not really allow. So that's something that we see.
Can I respond?
Yeah, let's
Please.
Yeah, so we are also very much working on training our regulators, right? Because most of the people working for us are they're lawyers, ex-lawyers, or economists or something like that. But thinking about technology, thinking about AI, you need to learn how to think statistically, which is very difficult for a lot of people. So we are really trying to train our people to become more and more tech savvy, and also to be able to have conversations about AI models and about RegTech, and be open to that. So
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Now, looking at the audience, is there someone who wants to ask a question to the panel? If so, raise your hand, please.
Thank you so much. My name is working.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Konrad Borowski. I'm working as domain lead for business lending at KNAP. So one of the most important society area of importance of banks was presented was lending and providing access to the credit. So as neobanks, like banks as well, I wanted to hear your opinion on your approach towards credit, towards lending. Very often we see that the roadmaps of neobanks, they start with accounts, and then we move to cards, and we move to transfers, and then things like expense management, cashback, those kind of things. Lending lands very late on those roadmaps. So maybe why? What is your approach, and how are you actually at your company planning to approach access to credit?
And that is a question for?
Well, neobanks, I would say.
Should I go first?
Yeah.
I can try without the mic.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Also the back? Perfect. Yeah, actually for us it's a bit of an extraordinary situation. So your old CFO and founder is now on our board and also as an investor. And I made him the promise to not go for a full banking license while he is there. So the lending part is something that we will do with a partner. And for us the most important conditions for that is to do it in a seamless way. So that means that for an end user, it needs to be super quick, super simple, and we need to use the data that we have from the user to provide the loans. So you can also think about proactively screening and those kind of things to really help entrepreneurs with their businesses. So that's our approach.
And there's a question here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
Well, thanks everyone. My name is Elisa. I'm a product developer at Morten. I have a question also, I think, towards neobanks. So you were talking about scaling to the new markets, but also deep diving into the new functionalities like AI. So how do you find the perfect balance between those two activities for neobanks?
Getting back a little bit to what I said earlier, whenever you try to not only launch a new product but implement a new technology, the base of what we're looking at is like, how does it deliver some value for my customers, basically. And when we speak about integrating new technologies or new product or going deeper into a market, we will try to keep this approach. We will keep this approach actually, like whenever implementing new technology. With AI in general, if I can take like a very classical example of what we implemented an AI chatbot in order to help our customers to get like faster answers when they reach out to customer support. But the reason we did that was not to cut the costs of the number of employees we had in the bank, but it was for our customers to actually get faster responses. And what we saw as a result of implementing this technology is a big raise in customer satisfaction when it came to them reaching out to us, and the quality of the answer provided was very it decreased the time between like the question of the customer and the answer quite significantly, for instance. So like whenever you're launching something on the market, I think that always try to keep the customer in mind and try to understand like what kind of value you're trying to deliver for your end customer, because this is the key, I think, to success.
Thank you. Yes, no worries. My name is Timothy Bisester, head of legal for Revolut, for the Dutch branch. I had a question for Frans. So I sort of understood the long story short to be use technology as much as possible, which is available, and ultimately try to prove to the regulator that it can work and the risks are managed. My question to you would be, to what degree is DNB or your peer regulators assessing new technology? So in other words, to make them a level partner in speaking to them with respect to appreciating the value of technology and the implementation to current rules that isn't really built for the current technology boom which is happening at the moment. So the question is clear?
Do you mean if we use the technology ourselves, or whether we understand the technology that the sector is using?
Yes, as a regulator, so that last part.
The
But
last
also,
part.
how do you ensure that across the regulators, so across DNB, it's
Yeah.
appreciated on the regulatory use?
Ah,
So, I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
understand
yeah.
it, but how do
Yeah,
your
that-
supervisory team members understand it?
yeah. So if I look at not all prudential regulators appreciate innovation, because some of them say the prudential mandate that we have is directly opposed to innovation, and I think that's very silly. I don't understand how you can make that argument, but very senior people make the argument. So my contra-argument is, if you don't innovate, you will not survive, and that's a prudential argument. So I think the opinions are mixed, but what really helps for us if senior people and politicians speak up. So our Secretary of Finance, Minister Heijnen, he basically wrote a letter where he said we need to do more with innovation, and that helps a lot. And then our board actually starts talking about innovation more and more. Where I see that the regulators do most with innovation is in the UK, the Financial Conduct Authority, because they have an innovation mandate in their legal mandate, right? So they also have to support innovation. It's part of their role, and then they do it. Same in Singapore with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. They do the same. So they have very productive sandboxes. But if you don't have innovation in your legal mandate, then sandboxes, for instance, don't work. Because regulators, it's very difficult for them to think innovatively. And then how do we get innovation more between the ears of our regulators? They have to understand technology more, and I think that will just take time. And if I'm very honest, and this really has to be kept in the room, sometimes we just need a judge to say that we can do it. So there was a neobank who actually did this. I will not go deeper into the case, but that had quite a big impact at DNB. and that showed us that we needed to move our standpoint on supervising technology. We are making progress there, but things are moving slowly. But I still am very confident that if you have a good explanation to the regulator, they have to listen, and if they are very irrational, just go to court.
That was a very interesting case indeed. Just reference.